INFJs are some of the most loyal people you will ever come across. And because of this, their decision to walk away from someone or something is never taken lightly. When they finally decide to turn their backs, it is usually the result of long periods of reflection, internal struggle, and a weighing of values that others may not even notice. To understand why INFJs rarely come back or change their minds once they leave, one has to first understand the way they process emotions and look at relationships. INFJs do not give their loyalty, trust, or love casually. It takes them time to open up to people. When they decide to let someone in, it is because they have envisioned a meaningful bond and see alignment in values or emotional depth. This means they invest their whole being into that relationship. They nurture, give, forgive, and often sacrifice their own needs to maintain harmony. Because they give so much of themselves, the breaking point is never about a single fight or disagreement. Instead, it comes after patterns of hurt, neglect, dishonesty, or betrayal that erode the foundation they once believed was unshakable. By the time they walk away, they have already endured what most people might not have tolerated. The decision to walk away is also often not impulsive. INFJs replay events in their minds countless times, analyzing not just what happened, but why it happened and what it reveals about a person's true character. They examine the hidden intentions, the emotional inconsistencies, and the patterns that point toward deeper truths. Because their intuition is so strong, once they sense that someone is incapable of genuine change, growth, or alignment with their values, they internalize it as final. For them, walking away is not about punishing the other person. It is about self-preservation, protecting their peace. If you want to truly understand yourself and unlock your full potential as an INFJ, check out the INFJ Mastery course today. The link is in the description of this video. Another reason INFJs rarely come back after walking away is their strong attachment to integrity and authenticity. If they walk away, it means they no longer believe the bond is authentic or salvageable. To go back would feel like betraying themselves, and INFJs cannot easily live with self-betrayal. Their moral compass is deeply ingrained, and once they see someone cross a line that violates their principles, whether it be dishonesty, manipulation, or a lack of respect, they mark it as a turning point. It's not just the behavior that matters, but what the behavior reveals about the other person's way of thinking. Once they see a truth they cannot unsee, no amount of apologies or promises can undo that realization. The way they walk away quietly also speaks volumes. INFJs do not typically leave with anger, revenge, or drama. By the time they're ready to go, they have already processed the pain privately and made peace with their decision. They are not seeking closure from the other person because they have already created closure within themselves. This inner closure is what makes it so difficult to bring them back. While others might leave emotionally entangled and therefore remain susceptible to being pulled back, INFJs leave with their hearts already detached. Their absence is not just physical, it is emotional, mental, and spiritual. INFJs also have an extraordinary ability to see the long-term picture. They don't just evaluate what is happening in the moment. They project into the future. If they sense that staying connected will only lead to repeated cycles of disappointment, they remove themselves before more damage is done. This forward-looking nature makes them decisive in their departures. Even if the other person suddenly changes or promises to improve, the INFJ remembers the countless times they hoped for change before and were left disappointed. They know that real transformation does not happen overnight, and they are unwilling to gamble their peace of mind on uncertain promises. Another powerful reason INFJs never come back is their relationship with energy and empathy. Because they feel so deeply and often absorb the emotions of others, toxic or unbalanced relationships take a heavy toll on their mental and emotional health. Once they experience the freedom of stepping away and regaining their clarity, they rarely want to re-expose themselves to the same environment. The relief they feel when their emotional space is no longer clouded is often enough to reinforce that leaving was the right decision. Returning would feel like walking back into a storm they fought so hard to escape. It is also important to understand that INFJs are not interested in superficial relationships or temporary fixes. They want depth, growth, and authenticity. If they walk away, it means they no longer see the potential for those things to exist. They are not swayed by nostalgia or short-term gestures. For them, a relationship has to align with their deeper vision of what life should feel like. And once that vision is shattered, it cannot be rebuilt on shaky ground. They would rather choose solitude, which they often find enriching, than return to a relationship that no longer resonates with their soul. When an INFJ walks away, it is a declaration of self-worth. They may have tolerated more than they should for the sake of love or loyalty, but their departure is a reclaiming of their boundaries. It is a recognition that they deserve peace, respect, and authenticity. Once they make that step, their pride and self-respect anchor the decision. To go back would feel like undoing their own growth, like returning to a version of themselves that no longer exists. And because INFJs are always striving toward growth and transformation, they prefer to continue forward rather than circle back. Another reason why INFJs never come back once they walk away lies in the way they experience closure. For many people, closure is something they seek externally, an apology, an explanation, or some kind of reconciliation. INFJs, however, do not depend on external sources for that finality. They are masters of finding closure within themselves. Once they have processed the emotions, understood the lessons, and tied up the loose ends in their own hearts, they feel no need to reopen old wounds by revisiting the person or situation. This ability to create internal resolution makes their departures permanent, because they are not waiting for anyone else to provide them with healing. INFJs are also guided by a strong inner compass that values growth above comfort. When they sense that a relationship or situation is holding them back from evolving into the best version of themselves, they will eventually step away. They see life as a constant journey toward becoming more authentic and aligned with their higher vision. If a connection feels stagnant, repetitive, or resistant to growth, it becomes a silent weight on their spirit. Once they let it go, they rarely revisit it, because to do so would mean stepping back into a place that no longer matches their evolving identity. To them, going back is like re-entering a room they have already outgrown. It feels suffocating and regressive. Another reason is that INFJs carry memory like a deep emotional imprint. They may forgive, but they do not forget, and the things they experience are stored not just in their minds but in their hearts and bodies. When someone has hurt them repeatedly, or when a situation has drained them beyond repair, the memory of that pain stays alive within them. Even if circumstances change on the surface, the emotional imprint remains. This memory acts as a warning system, reminding them not to repeat cycles that once broke their spirit. Because of this, they find it extremely difficult to return to old dynamics. Their sensitivity to emotional residue makes them wary of places or people tied to pain. The INFJ's sense of destiny and meaning also influences their choices. They're always looking at life through the lens of purpose. Why certain people came into their lives, what lessons they were meant to learn, and how each experience fits into their larger journey. Once they decide that a chapter has served its purpose, they feel a quiet finality about it. They view it as part of a greater story that has already moved forward. To go back would be, in their eyes, like resisting the natural unfolding of life. They trust their intuition enough to believe that endings happen for a reason, and that new doors are waiting to open once an old one is closed. There is also the fact that INFJs dislike repetition. They are easily drained by patterns that feel cyclical or unchanging. If they walked away once, it is because they identified a loop that felt unhealthy or meaningless. To return would mean willingly stepping back into the same loop they worked so hard to escape. They crave novelty, progress, and transformation, not repetition of the same disappointments. This inner resistance to cycles ensures that once they step out of one, they do not go back, no matter how tempting it may seem in moments of weakness. On a deeper level, INFJs have a natural ability to detach once they fully decide to. While they are known for their deep attachments and empathy, there's another side to them. When they finally let go, the detachment can be absolute. This is sometimes described as the INFJ door slam, but it is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of preservation. Once their empathy and care are withdrawn, it is almost impossible to reignite it in the same way. Their energy has shifted elsewhere, and they have already begun investing in new people, passions, or visions for the future. That redirection of energy is what makes them so resolute in never looking back. Another overlooked reason is that INFJs often spend so much time advocating for and supporting others that when they finally put themselves first, they feel an immense sense of liberation. This shift in self-prioritization is profound for them, and once they taste it, they are reluctant to let it go. Returning to a past relationship or situation often feels like returning to self-neglect, and that is a cost they are unwilling to pay again. Their decision to walk away is often the first time they have chosen themselves fully, and that act becomes a cornerstone of their self-respect moving forward. INFJs believe strongly in the permanence of transformation. When they change, it is not superficial. It is not a mood or a temporary state. It is a rebirth. Their growth is like a one-way door. Once they pass through it, they cannot return to the version of themselves that tolerated less or stayed in places that diminished them. Because of this, when they walk away, it is not just the end of a relationship or a situation. It is the end of a version of themselves who would have stayed. That old self no longer exists, and so returning is not even an option in their inner world. Another reason why INFJs never return once they walk away is their deep sense of time and investment. They are highly aware of the energy they have already poured into someone or something, and they recognize that revisiting a broken connection would mean reinvesting in a place that has already consumed too much of their time. They have a natural understanding that time is one of the most precious resources in life, and once wasted, it can never be retrieved. For them, going back feels like pouring water into a cracked vessel. No matter how much they give, it will not hold. This awareness makes them guard their future investments fiercely after they've chosen to move on. INFJs also thrive on alignment with truth. Their inner compass is not swayed by appearances or temporary changes in circumstance. Once they sense that the truth of a situation has been revealed, they cannot unknow it. They may have once lived in hope, giving chances and waiting for things to shift, but once reality has crystallized in their perception, they anchor themselves in that clarity. To go back would be to deny the truth they've already uncovered, which for them would feel like dishonesty at the deepest level. They would rather endure loneliness or uncertainty than step back into an environment where the truth feels compromised. Another reason they rarely look back is their quiet pride. INFJs are not prideful in the sense of arrogance, but they do carry a deep respect for the decisions they've made after careful deliberation. Once they have walked away, they want their actions to reflect consistency and conviction. Returning would feel like undoing their own strength, like telling themselves their boundaries were negotiable after all. Their pride reinforces the permanence of their decision, because they want their lives to reflect the discipline and self-respect they worked hard to establish. Also, INFJs hold a very strong vision of the future, and once they have walked away, they begin constructing a new path for themselves. Their minds and hearts move toward what could be, not what was. They immerse themselves in new goals, new relationships, or new creative projects, and as they pour themselves into those, the past naturally fades further away. Their vision acts as a forward momentum, pulling them ahead so forcefully that going back almost feels unnatural, like trying to walk against a strong current. Once they've tasted the possibilities of what lies ahead, the past loses its power to draw them in. INFJs also tend to see their relationships symbolically. They read meaning into every relationship, and when a bond is broken, they do not just see the person, they see what that relationship represented. If it represented pain, betrayal, stagnation, or misalignment, then walking away means rejecting not just the person, but the symbol of everything unhealthy they experienced in that connection. To return would be to reaccept the symbol of their own suffering, and this goes against their instinct to live with meaning and dignity. Another key reason lies in their boundaries. INFJs often struggle with boundaries earlier in life, saying yes when they should say no, or absorbing more than they should. When they finally learn the lesson of setting boundaries, they hold on to it with unwavering conviction. Walking away often represents one of the strongest boundaries they've ever created. To break it by returning would not only hurt them, but undo the growth they've worked so hard to achieve. Their boundaries become like sacred lines, and once crossed, there's no going back. Also, INFJs rarely come back after they have walked away because of their sense of identity. They are deeply introspective, and their sense of self evolves through every decision they make. Walking away shapes their identity into someone stronger, wiser, and more self-respecting. To go back would fracture that identity, leaving them with an inner conflict that they cannot tolerate. They see their life as a continuous story of transformation, and once a chapter is closed, their identity shifts to reflect that closure. Returning would not just be a decision, it would feel like betraying the person they have now become. Another powerful reason INFJs do not come back once they walk away is their natural tendency to protect their dignity in silence. INFJs rarely make grand exits or loud declarations when they leave. Instead, they withdraw quietly, having already processed the emotions and come to terms with the outcome. This quiet departure adds a level of permanence to their decision. Because they did not leave to prove a point or to get attention, they also do not feel the need to return for validation. The dignity in their silence becomes a seal on their choice, making it nearly impossible for them to reverse course. INFJs also guard their trust like a rare jewel. It takes immense effort for them to trust someone deeply, and when that trust is broken, the fracture runs to the core of their being. Even if the other person claims to change, the INFJ's natural intuition makes them skeptical. They cannot rebuild trust the way others might, because they always see the fracture beneath the surface. That fracture is a reminder that the bond is no longer whole, and because they value authenticity, they cannot pretend otherwise. To them, broken trust is like a shattered mirror. It may be glued back together, but it will never reflect the same way again. Another overlooked reason is their sensitivity to patterns of power and control. INFJs are acutely aware of manipulation, even subtle forms of it. They may not call it out immediately, but they sense it deeply. If they walk away after recognizing patterns of control, gaslighting, or emotional imbalance, they do so with the knowledge that such patterns rarely change. Returning would expose them again to dynamics they already know are unhealthy. Because they value equality and mutual respect in all forms of relationships, they will not step back into a relationship that compromises their sense of self-worth. If you want to truly understand yourself and unlock your full potential as an INFJ, check out the INFJ Mastery course today. The link is in the description of this video.